Hello, everyone. I'm Hugh Kretschmer, a photographer, director, and chair of the Los Angeles chapter of APA. Welcome to the 13th edition of Off the Clock, Meet the Curator. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Today, I'm delighted to present our esteemed jurist for this year, George Kocis, who is director and partner at Staley-Wise Gallery in New York City. Before we delve into today's event with our host, Natalie Gordon, I'd like to extend our gratitude to the sponsors who made this event possible. Those sponsors are Reclaimed Frame, Print Studio at Film Solutions, and a very special thank you to Sammy's Camera for their years of donations, member discounts, and undying support. We are incredibly grateful. For those unfamiliar with APA or the American Photographic Artists, we are a national nonprofit organization comprised of dedicated professional photographers who generously contribute their time and expertise to benefit our members. Our mission encompasses education, advocacy, promotion, and fostering community spirit. With chapters nationwide, we provide our members exclusive national and regional vendor discounts accessible through our website. Locally, our chapters host a variety of events, including curated portfolio reviews, competitions, and other platforms for showcasing your work. That said, the call for entries for this coming Off the Clock opens on March 1st. For more details, visit apanational.org. Without further delay, let's extend a warm welcome to my fellow board member and our host, Natalie Gordon.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Hugh, for a great introduction. And thank you for George taking time to speak with us this afternoon. So I'm Natalie Gordon, a photographer and APA Los Angeles board member. I'd like to welcome and thank you for joining us to kick off our 13th annual APA Off the Clock competition, which, as Hugh mentioned, launches on the 1st of March. Stay tuned at the end of the talk for a unique discount code, which you can use for a reduced entry fee to this year's competition. Excuse me. So without further ado, I'll introduce you to George Kocis. George graduated with a degree in photography from the University of Arts in Philadelphia before he joined the gallery in 2005. He currently serves on the board of directors for the Association of International Photography Art Dealers. So let me tell you a little bit about Staley-Wise Gallery. It was founded by Ethelene Staley and Takui Wise. It opened in 1981 with an exhibition of H.P. Horse photographs. They continue to specialize in fashion photography, which they introduced to the gallery world. In addition to fashion, the gallery exhibits an extensive collection of portraiture, landscape, still life, and nudes, all with an emphasis on style. Staley-Wise Gallery works with museums, private intuitions, and collectors worldwide. There we go. Hi, George. How are you today?
Good. How are you, Natalie?
I'm good. I'm good now. I've got the introductions out the way. It's a bit of a mouthful. But we would like to know a bit about you, your journey, and kind of how you became a curator, what that involves. So can you tell us, from graduating and joining Staley-Wise, like what was the transition, and can you tell us a bit about that journey?
Sure. So when I went to school at the University of the Arts for photography, and I used to go to the AIPAD show, I think starting when I was in sophomore year. And for those of you who don't know, AIPAD is what Natalie mentioned. I'm on the board of directors now, but it's a Photography Dealers Association. And they started their annual, basically like an art fair for photography. I believe it was started in the early 90s. And at the time I was starting to go was in the basement of the Hilton Hotel. And I was studying photography, and I was very interested in like portraits and fashion photography. And I was in the basement at the show, and I walked by a booth that had a giant, like massive 7-foot tall Helmut Newton nude of Charlotte Rampling, which is a very famous picture in our world. And I remember I was just an art student with my backpack, and I for whatever reason I asked the person there, like, well, how much does that cost? I've always been interested in the commerce part and the business of photography. And I remember that the person was very nice and wasn't condescending and told me what the price was. And we had a chat, and I took her car, and that was Takui. That was Takui-Wise. And then when I graduated, I still kept the card, and I just wanted to move to New York City. That was to be honest, that was really my goal, uh, over maybe even pursuing the career in photography. I wanted to be in New York, like many young kids do. So once I graduated, I got a job waiting tables at a restaurant on the Upper East Side. And then at the same time, I called up the number on the card, and I said, can I be an intern? And they met me, and they said, sure. And then I was an intern while I was waiting tables for about, I think, 6, 8 months. And then the person who was kind of like one of the staff members was leaving, and that was the registrar. And they said, do you want to take their place? So I quit my job waiting tables, and then I was at Staley-Wise after that. So that must have been around late 2005. And I have been there ever since. I took a brief break when I went to work for one of the photographers that Staley-Wise works with, who was Stephen Klein, who was still is a big fashion and portrait photographer. And I worked for him for a year, and I was managing his gallery editions and prints, and I really enjoyed the experience. It was very eye-opening, and he was very nice, but I missed working with other people, multiple artists, multiple people. And so actually, Tacky and Ethline had asked me to come into the gallery on weekends. They paid me to come into galleries on weekends to deal with clients, because they wanted their staff to have someone there that I guess was more comfortable with that. And they just kept saying, well, when you want to come back, just come back. So finally I did, and I've been there ever since. And so Tacky and Ethline started the gallery in 1982 or 81, excuse me. And since I've been there, it's been almost 18, 19 years. Obviously I've transitioned to have more responsibilities, and now I am doing a lot more dealing with the exhibitions and curating and whatnot. So it's been an interesting experience for me, because unlike a lot of people in the gallery world, I'm very unusual that I've only worked at one gallery, and that has its pluses and minuses. One of the pluses is that I really see how that business works from A to Z, so I have been the intern, and now so I've seen top to bottom how it all works. So I'm obviously quite comfortable there. And I know our artists and our clients very well. And it's been a wonderful learning experience that I'm looking forward to continuing. So
That's amazing. So like fresh out of college, you met Takui and then formed your relationship, and then worked your way up.
yeah, I didn't really know about galleries, to be honest. I loved my school, but we didn't really go to galleries that much. And it was all about and that's something I do stress to students when I meet them. I always, yes, you're going to school to be an artist or a photographer, but there's a lot of really wonderful, fulfilling careers in that field that aren't necessarily being a working artist.
Yeah.
And I have to say that was not something that really my school, for better or for worse, spoke about, so I didn't even know galleries sold pictures. I mean, I really didn't know, because I just thought it was like where you went, so but I have to say, Tacky was so nice. She still is, and that really it was very impactful in the sense that I always try, I think galleries sometimes are very intimidating places, And I think it's important that, you know, we not be so much.
No,
Because
I
yeah,
completely agree. Like,
it changed my life. So yeah.
yeah, my university as well. We were taught like the creative process, how to develop your photography, your film in the darkroom and all that stuff. And we learned a little bit about art history, but not much. And I thought to have your work in a gallery, you had to be dead.
Yeah.
Didn't know you
Yeah.
could still be alive and still still show
Yeah.
a body of work. So no, thank you for sharing that and sharing your personal influences uh within the industry. How did you kind of I'm not sure if you're from Philadelphia, but why Philadelphia and how did you decide on a degree in photography?
Oh, when I was in high school, I've always been very arty, and I started taking pictures of my friends. And I had one photography teacher who really, really allowed me to use the darkroom as much as possible. And, you know, to be honest, I was taking pictures of my friends without a lot of clothes, and he was very encouraging as much as he could be, without violating any uh laws or anything. So he really encouraged me, and I thought that it was something I'd want to do. So I applied to many different schools, and this was the one that best suited me and my family at the time. And um I'll be very honest, it wasn't my first choice, but I am so grateful I went there. And Yeah, I was actually just talking with Ethelene about college and choosing a college, and I was, I said I'm not sure it matters as much anymore where you go. I think it used to be like there was such a emphasis on Ivy League or whatnot, or Yale or RISD or Cooper Union or whatnot. And now, at least when I'm looking at resumes, it's honestly, I don't look at that part at all, because I think that I had such an amazing experience that was sort of outside the realm of what even the university was formally giving me in regards to education. But they really fostered a creative environment that was very, very encouraging. And I don't think my understanding from other schools is it's despite the fact that they may be art schools, it's not quite always like that. So I'm I am so grateful that is how I, went to school. So
That's amazing. I was having this conversation just the other day about college college, especially out here. Like it's so expensive and it's like, do you really need it? And like I remember the growing up, like the emphasis was on like internships and apprenticeships where you could get actual real life experience, which I feel like you have had when you first joined the gallery. Can you tell us a bit like, so how does it work? That you mentioned that you was a registrar. Can you explain a bit about that role and then kind of how you moved up to becoming
sure.
director and now partner?
So the registrar for every gallery is a little bit different. Staley-Wise has 4 employees. Gagosian Gallery has, I don't know, 1,000 or something. So as you can imagine, the scales of business are very different within each business. But the registrar at the time, Tacky and Ethelene were there every day. So they were really dealing with the clients, most directly dealing with the photographers. The registrar's role was basically when a work comes in, it's quote unquote given an ID, it's registered into the system, it's acknowledged paperwork wise, it's cared for physically, so put in the correct box on the correct shelf, packed however it needs to be packed. And then when works go out, whether that's through sales or loans, that's also the registrar's job to acknowledge that. When I was starting, you know, there was a lot of business done via email, but believe it or not, there wasn't it was not. I always say that when I started, when you wanted to buy a Horst photograph, you mentioned Horst was the first artist that Staley-Wise exhibited. Pretty much the way you did it was you called Staley-Wise and you talked to Tacky or Ethelene, and you said, well, I'd like to come in Wednesday. They said, sure, I'll be there. You looked at the pictures. Maybe you thought about it or you didn't. You either bought it or you didn't, or you thought about it for a few days and then you called them up and said, I'll buy it, blah, blah, blah. So there was no like sharing of JPEGs via email or text or yada, yada. So over time, of course, that changed. And so the registrar and archivist job, including when I was doing that position, changed to really dealing with digital archiving, meaning keeping a register of all the JPEG. I mean, there wasn't, it sounds crazy, but there wasn't really a visual database of the artworks. The system actually was just it was all text. So you wrote what it was. We even had to write a description of naked woman on horse or whatever, but of course that wasn't really adequate. The system was quite literally not built to hold a JPEG. So it's changed a lot since I started. And of course, being a visual industry, it's very important. But because people weren't, people weren't using computers in the way for businesses as they are now. So, and screens weren't as good, and people weren't considering art as something that you would even consider seriously if you saw it on a screen, And I don't think that was just Staley-Wise. I think that was the business in general. So it's changed quite a, that position has now become much more of a digital archivist in addition to registering. And then after I was doing that, Tacky and Ethylene, they each started to get to the point of their life where one of them wanted to take some time off. And so I began very slowly to deal more directly with photographers and really with collectors. And so that's how it sort of went that direction. So, but I will say that the only reason I became more comfortable with collectors is because I really didn't know the inventory because I was the registrar,
Right.
and that's something I always hate whenever you go into any place, certainly a gallery, where what we're doing, to be honest, any gallery is offering works at a pretty high level for not a small amount of money. And it drives me crazy when you're speaking to someone that doesn't know anything about it, So, I mean, that's the whole reason you go into a gallery is to know more. So, I think that because I wouldn't have been able to climb up if I wasn't the registrar, because it's how everything. I knew every edition, and this is in this size, and this is this medium. And so I think collectors felt comfortable because even if, I was pretty young, I didn't know much about other aspects of life, maybe, but, they could ask a question about the work and I could generally answer it.
That's amazing. I always thought galleries were like really snooty places where if you didn't have like millions of dollars, like you kind of didn't belong in there. And I feel like that's changing now. It's like you've got different types of galleries opening up. And I remember I went to Art Basel one year in Miami, and this I can't remember the name of the gallery, but I have it written down somewhere. But the curator was so kind, and he was just like, I have no problem showing you these like unique works because you are my future customer. It may not be today, may not be tomorrow, may not be in 5 years' time, but in 10 years' time, you'll remember that I showed you a whole bunch of stuff and took the time to show you and to explain things to you, and then you'll become my future customer. And I was just like, I felt so included, and then I felt less scared about galleries and going in and asking questions. And your presence as well is very inviting, and it's really really inspiring to hear that you spent the time to like know the artist's work and be able to speak to collectors on that level. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I want to ask more about how the gallery works with like museums and maybe other galleries and publishers. Like, what type of collaboration is that? And can you tell us about any examples?
So one of the, and this deals with the changes in the business, but many photographers that Staley-Wise works with are represented by other galleries around the world. So
Okay.
that's a very big thing that's changed, is because the business started out from a few galleries at AIPAD, that every photographer was fighting to be in one of them. Now artists they're in a much better position in the world of business, and so many photographers are most are not happy with just one gallery. They want a gallery in Los Angeles, they want a gallery in Paris, they want a gallery, wherever. And that's been very different. So one of the results of that is that the artists themselves have become a lot more business savvy and realize the benefit, and they don't rely as much on the gallery. And because of that, we are not as involved as perhaps we would have been with institutional exhibitions, books, et cetera, whatnot. And so, we, even though we may represent the artist and we may know about and sort of just be updated on it, lots of times the artists that we work with, they have, you and I had spoken before about David LaChapelle, and his show at Photographic Artists recently. I mean, Staley-Wise has represented David since, I honestly think the late 80s, really, one of the first. But he now, at this point, he's, as you know, quite a successful and established artist. He quite literally has a team of people to manage his institutional exhibitions. So of course we're aware of it. They let us know, but they do that on their own. And with books, we certainly make introductions to publishers that we know and yada yada yada. But at the end of the day, and we may also be invited into the editing process. But it's really, a book is something very personal to artists, and they want to work directly with the publisher about that. The one, occasionally the gallery is invited in a bigger capacity with, so a good example is the Getty in Los Angeles a few years ago had a show called Icons of Style. And it was really it was a really big institutional acknowledgement of the impact that fashion photography has had. And the curator, who, obviously knew a lot, but, he was smart enough to recognize that there was a lot that he could learn. So he worked very closely with Etheline, just so he could learn about photographers that weren't just Richard Avedon and Irving Penn, but who had been working successfully in the business and had a lot of work published and had an impact on the industry. And so, and besides that, because we have a history with those artists, we are one of the few galleries that has actual physical prints by some of these artists. So there was loans that were facilitated because of that. And I would say, most institutional exhibitions and collections that are interested in seeing fashion photography as part of their exhibition schedule or in their permanent collections, they come to Staley-Wise for that expertise in that specific area specifically. So
Wow. Okay, that's pretty impressive. So this is like a personal question. When you have an artist and they are represented by multiple galleries and you do all the hard work that you do with like building relationships with collectors, how does that work in terms of sales? So is it like, say a collector came to you guys and they learned everything they wanted to know about like Slim Aarons, and then they went to someone else and then they bought the print from someone else, but you spent time building that relationship. Do you negotiate with another gallery, or it's just that's just how the business works now?
that's how the business works.
Okay.
I'm long past getting annoyed by that, because the truth is that, as I said, when I described back in the day when you just called up the gallery, that's totally gone, and it's sort of sad in a way, although I hate to be one of those people that says, oh, back in the day it was better. But I love that when I was starting out going to galleries and working at Staley-Wise and being a student, I think a gallerist's job is to be an educator, regardless of sales and selling and da 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 da. I think a huge part of that is education. So that's why, you have to sort of teach people, whether they're going to buy a picture or not, about the artist and about the artwork. The problem now is with the internet is that now the gallery is the last stop on that journey. So collectors do their own research, whether or not it's correct or not. They do their own research largely online. So they Google whatever they can find. They find out all about the artist. They find out the artist auction records. They find out all the galleries, da, 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 da. They see, oh, who seems to have the best possible price? What if I ship it to New Jersey? Well, I have to pay sales tax. You know, all of that stuff, you know, most collectors in a wide, frankly, age range do that research online, and Staley-Wise becomes the last stop. They say, okay, I want to buy it. You know, you oftentimes don't even have much of a conversation because they know it already, because they've looked at our website, they've looked at whatever we're putting on Artsy or ArtNet, da 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 da. So that is, and because of that, what you just mentioned, a collector can see that art is available, you know, the same artist is available at different galleries. And truthfully, it's up to them to make a choice. There's not much, you know, all we can do is answer questions, obviously be as welcoming as possible. And then at the end of the day, the choice is literally up to the collector, and that's completely fine, you know, so.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to curating a show. How do you begin putting a show together, and do you have any specific starting points? Is there any kind of like, what do you look for? Like, how does it work? Like, because I'm asking this question based on like my own archive, and a lot of photographers, they go through their work and they don't know what to show. So like, can you talk to us a bit about curating? And
Yeah. So first of all, for the sake of this conversation, I think you're referring to sort of single show artists, you know, not group shows.
yeah.
The truth is first you have to find out what the artist wants. What's their goal of the show?
Okay.
Some artists will frankly say, I really need to sell pictures. Some artists will say, this is a new body of work I'm really excited about. I want to show this. Or I feel like this body of work, you know, which I did so long ago, hasn't been given its due. I really want to highlight that. So you have to have a conversation with the artist first. You may not necessarily agree with their intention, but it's important that you know it and acknowledge it and can work with that. Because obviously, if you don't have them on board, it's not going to work, you know. So when you're dealing with the living artist or an estate, by the way, it all applies, you know, estate can have the same concerns. You first want to ask what their goals are. The second thing is, you know, frankly, we are not a museum, we are a gallery. So we are supported by sales of our artists' work. So I think I am not ashamed to say that there's always got to be a business mindset, you know? So we try to make work that we think our collector base will respond to and buy, you know? Um, it's not really a problem because I've never met any artist that said, I really don't want to sell anything at the show. You know, so it's not really a problem, but I also, you know, I'd like to remind people that that's what we do, you know, that's the business we're in, you know. So we definitely, if there's a very provocative body of work, for example, we have to keep that in mind. We have to say, look, we can show this, but we need to show something else that our audience will respond to, you know, more broadly. You can have that provocative piece or that provocative works, but maybe it can't be the whole show, et cetera, et cetera. So that's sort of in the bigger picture, that's how we're dealing with exhibitions. And then on a smaller level, just how we deal with our space, you know, it's just consideration on what, you know, it's sort of esoteric things, you know, oh, this size looks great, this size doesn't look great, oh, this picture needs more breathing room. It's stuff like that as well, you know.
And then so how do you decide like where on the walls each piece goes, like, and like the order? Because obviously I was fortunate enough to come and take a look at your gallery, and you kind of wind yourself around a little bit. How do you decide which piece goes where? And, you know, is there a flow or is there a story? Like,
There is, you know, we sort of, because obviously I've been looking at people going to the gallery for a long time, I can see how people respond to the space, you know. So for example, when you walk in, I think it's very important to have a really inviting work. On a sort of stupid base level, I try not to have pictures where people's faces are turned away or they're walking away from the viewer on an opening wall. You know, I'm trying to make something that says, come on in, rather than kind of stop, don't, So, that's sort of a stupid example, but it's little things like that that all build up to a welcoming environment and a show that you want to continue to see. So certainly, like, because as you mentioned, our gallery is not just a big white room. It has kind of it's almost like three rooms that are connected in a funny way. So I think it's nice to have a journey, and it's a great advantage because you can show work that maybe in the first room doesn't necessarily relate to the third room, but if you bridge it, it works that way, yeah.
Amazing. And are there any challenges that you face as a curator? Like, what kind of problems have you been faced with in the past?
I think look, at the end of the day, a gallery, unless you're dealing with if you're dealing on, let's say, only work that you own, where you can make all the decisions, which some galleries do, of course, you can make all the decisions. It can be a dictatorship. But most of the shows that Staley-Wise has, we're working with the artist or their family. And not only that, I'm, I'm a partner. There's two other partners in the business. Everyone has their own opinions. We're very different backgrounds and ages, and we're often very different backgrounds and ages from our artists. And so you have a lot of, there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, and it can be very complicated. And people, and especially artists, because obviously no one's closer to their work than they are, which is a good and bad thing, So part of what I think is so great about being a gallerist and curating shows is, you've got to see other perspectives, and I will say, I think sometimes what's really hard for an artist, and a lot of them realize this, is they're not necessarily the best editors of their work. They're too close to it. It's a good and bad thing. It just, that comes with the territory. So part of what we're doing is a gallery is almost providing the other perspective.
Yeah.
Most people that come into the gallery don't know the artist that as well as we know the artist, or the artist's friends and family know them. But so it's important that we show another perspective. And it's difficult. It makes it very difficult, but I wouldn't really want to. I think it would be less fun to do a show where you're just making all the decisions. No one's talking to you, no one's saying, oh, I prefer this or this. It would be easier, but it's definitely not as interesting, So it's important to have a lot of, it's important to see other perspectives of the work,
Yeah. So being with one gallery for so long, you've come to know all the artists' work inside out. Is there do you have like a personal aesthetic outside of the gallery that you like or gravitate towards? Or are you kind of so soaked in with the artists that you work?
Yeah. It's funny because I I do wonder even about that, like if I can't separate it now, because when I started as a student, I really loved the work that the gallery showed, truly, personally. And I still do, and I've been lucky enough to have some of these artists in my personal collection, Um, I think that just because of the nature of my age, uh, I don't have as much of a connection to kind of older 1950s, 1960s era, also probably because of gender fashion photography. I can appreciate it. Of course, there's some of our greatest artists, Irving Penn, what can you say, but it's probably not something that, whereas Tacky and Ethylene, that's their era. They live through it and they can respond to it, and it means something to them personally. So I would say that yes, sometimes I think I have a little bit, maybe more of a more contemporary outlook on work than maybe Staley-Wise always has. But that's, I don't want to say a blanket statement, and as I said, I think that the differing perspectives is really important rather than just a difficulty, I think it's interesting. So
So can you tell us what keeps you inspired?
yeah, the artists, the great thing about photography and working artists is it's I do think about this sometimes, like a painter. Some painters take months to create one painting, and so I imagine, the gallerist is waiting, and then they see one, and you hope it's something amazing. The great thing about photography is that there's naturally just more volume involved, so a shoot produces hundreds, if not thousands, of images rather than one painting, so it's the nature of the medium makes it very easy to continue to be inspired, especially because so many of our artists are, now that digital is so incredible, our artists who are older are maybe now going through their archive and able to digitize negatives that they never even looked at, and so it's been that part I really love. I love whenever an artist sort of opens up their archive to the gallery. I know it's very tough. It's like doing surgery on yourself. It's very vulnerable
It's
for an artist to
painful.
reveal that, but I just love it. I love finding treasures in that way. So
Um, that's amazing. Yeah, like whenever anyone says to me, "Oh, have you got this or that?" and I go into like a whole black hole of my old work, and I'm like, "Oh, it's painful sometimes. Sometimes it's exciting, sometimes it's painful." So
no, but yeah, it's very vulnerable. I get it. And I always I think of that. What I'm asking them to do is big. To me, I'm just like, oh, just look through this old, but I do understand on a deeper level that it's a bigger thing than that, but it's so rewarding when you find like a body of work or even just, I mean, a single image, and I love that part. And honestly, the artists do too, because it's just an acknowledgement that um there's still more, there's
yeah,
more to discover, so.
yeah. With your huge roster of artists that you represent, are you actively seeking new artists, or do you kind of concentrate on staying up to date with artists that are in the industry?
We it's this is a question we get asked a lot, and our answer changes. We're very, very, very lucky that we still have a very active business with our existing artists. The trouble with that is that they do take up a lot of our time and efforts and resources, as they deserve to,
Yeah, yeah,
and I do regret a little bit that I don't have the bandwidth to actively seek out newer artists as much as I can. That's said, we do work with a few newer artists, and by newer artists, to be honest, they tend to be people that are already pretty successful in a kind of editorial or fashion capacity, but have no experience in our gallery world. So,
which makes sense because
yeah, that's
you
the
have to
history
make
of the gallery.
money. Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll see what happens, because now, of course, that editorial is, in the dumps, and it used to be, when Tacky Nothing started, magazines were amazing. I mean, they were absolutely art. That was how they started the gallery, right? They were finding pictures that were in magazines and realizing this is just as good as anything, and we're having the photographer print it, and they were framing it and putting on a wall and really making a statement that said this is art, at the time that people frankly didn't really believe that.
Yeah.
Now I think people believe it. The problem now is that magazines are no longer the way, well, as not as much as the way for us to discover new work,
Yeah.
because they lack the budgets, to support younger artists a lot of times. And yeah, it's just a different business. So we will have to see, we obviously, every gallery can't sustain themselves on just their existing, and to be frank, then their deceased artists. So there has to always be a little bit of mobility within that stable of artists. So we'll see.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for photographers that are coming up to approach not necessarily yourself, but other galleries? Is there like a preferred like way that they can be solicited, or do they prefer to be left alone kind of thing?
It's funny, like I can only speak obviously from Staley-Wise, it, look, it's as I know how vulnerable it is to be an artist, at the same time, it's, I think artists have to be aware that, when you go in a gallery, it may kind of look like everyone's just sitting quietly at their laptop and not really doing anything, but we are, the person at the front desk is, so it's always a bad idea to go into a gallery with a stack of whatever and to expect and feel entitled to a huge amount of attention because you have work to show, without any advance notice, So, generally I would say when artists call us, they say, "Can I come in?" I say, "No, it's not a great idea to come in, but always email us JPEGs." I mean, that's the world we're in, right? Just email us JPEGs. We're in photography. They lend well to a screen, Email us JPEGs. We'll see if it's something we want to pursue. So, there's a lot of ways that I think artists shouldn't be presenting when you go, the worst thing also I have to say is to be at an art fair and to go to a gallerist that's in the middle of an art fair and say, "Can you look at my work?" It's a terrible time to
You're
do
making
that.
money. You're trying to make money.
It's a terrible time to do that. But that's also what I feel like gallerists have kind of a responsibility to participate in opportunities just like this one, and also portfolio reviews and whatnot, because that is an appropriate time to show your work to the people so you should show up for it. If you're asking people, "Don't bother me now," there you have to present it out and a time where, yes, now is the time to, So I think it's an important part of what we do is to participate in these reviews and contests and blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. So that moves me, sorry, onto my like three-part question, which relates to off the clock. When I've spoken to photographers, they're always like, "Oh, well, I haven't like photographed anything new. I don't have anything to show to enter the competition." The first part of the question is, do you have any tips or suggestions on how photographers can kind of create their own body of work for submission? Are there any themes or images that you're maybe bored of looking at? And is there and is there anything specific that you're looking for or interested in seeing? And feel free to ask me to repeat that because it's a bit long-winded.
I'd say, when I do portfolio reviews, the thing, and this is hard because especially in photography, right? I really do think it's very different than other mediums, is it's volume, right? So there is so many pictures out there, and everyone's a photographer with their iPhone. The problem is that when I get shown a lot of work that looks very similar, or quote unquote is inspired by very well-known artists, photographers, that's a big kind of red flag, because it's hard, because I can understand inspiration and there, especially when I love the inspiration, but I think that if there's a shadow of a doubt that your work really looks like someone else's, unfortunately, you should believe that, because certainly a gallerist who, you know, is at a pretty high visual capacity of, seeing things, is going to recognize that quicker than anybody, So that is always tricky when I see work that looks like other, especially well-known photographers, Um, and by the way, I acknowledge that it's very, very, very difficult to find a style, a unique style. So it's a very tough position, I think that in terms of what I get, no, I don't really get tired of seeing anything. I mean, I love in a portfolio review, I love a focus. I love when someone, to be honest, maybe shows me one body of work that is 10 pictures rather than 10 pictures that have no relationship to each other than, hey, this is me, So sometimes, and oftentimes I'll love the 10 pictures from a series of work, and I'm actually curious about what the rest is. You sort of want the gallerist to be curious, but if there's 10 unrelated pictures, it's difficult because you sort of think, well, who are you? What are you trying to say? Whereas a really focused body of work, I think, is pretty helpful. But the other thing with portfolio, I mean, it's a little bit like a show, whenever I do a portfolio review, I ask, the first thing I do is I say, what do you want out of this? Do you want to be, because sometimes people have very specific things like, what can I do to make this specific body of work better? I
Mhm.
can work with that, but if I don't know that's the question they're asking, then I may go off on a tangent of something else. Some people who are submitting their work for review quite honestly want to be in the gallery, so if they face up to that, then I can answer that question, yay or nay. So I think, when artists do a portfolio review, they don't necessarily all have the same goal. And I think it's important to kind of try to figure that out, or try to get them to figure it out rather.
Yeah, and in terms of off the clock, obviously we have photographers from like all different genres. You're not just looking for like fashion, like you're interested in seeing a wide range of pictures.
Yeah,
It's gonna say stuff, and I was like, it's not stuff.
yeah, I mean, I think actually, no, I mean, I think, and the other funny thing about, I have to say, it's specifically about what Staley-Wise has done, and we're sort of known for fashion, right? But the truth is that if you were to look on our website and look at our exhibitions, and actually look at just fashion photography in general, a lot of the very best has very little to do with fashion. It may barely show a sleeve or whatever, I mean, oftentimes you think, oh wow, I just realized there are no clothes at all, or that's just a t-shirt, you know what I mean? So at the end of the day, style, whether you're referencing fashion or just style of art, is much more important. And I think if you want to be a fashion photographer that just shows clothes beautifully, that's great. You should work for a design house that needs that, but we're not in the fashion industry, it has to be an image. The image has to trump how beautiful the garment is, So what I'm trying to say is, no, I mean, I think weirdly if you're not a fashion photographer and you're trying to show something in this contest that you think would be considered fashion, maybe that's not a good idea. I'm not, don't be who you are, I'm interested to see what you're best at, so.
Oh, thank you. That's really great. So we're almost out of time, and before we move on to the Q&A section, can we look or have a sneak peek at your upcoming exhibition with Ellen von Onwerth? Like, can you share with us your process, like how you designed it and kind of how the installation of the show is going to happen?
Sure. So we were talking now, Natalie, I have to say, I was going to do a screen sharing, but now my screen looks totally different. So I need to find that screen sharing button. Can you help me?
Oh, sure. So at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there should be a green share screen button.
There's not. Do I go to a different view? Hold on, let me see.
I'm not seeing.
Oh wait, no, I see it. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so please bear with me. Let me wait.
And I will come on to the Q&As. Everyone get your questions ready, dump them into the Q&A and not the chat, and then we will go through them after we've seen. I'm like on the edge of my seat. I love Ellen's work, and I can't wait to see.
So yeah, I think I've figured. Can you see my screen now?
We can see part of your screen.
See now or no?
Yeah, maybe zoom out a little bit. Can you do that?
Yes. Too
Okay.
much? Okay.
Yeah, no, here,
So,
this is great.
right. So this is actually, it kind of looks like nothing, but the way we start an exhibition, to be honest, is we build a scale dollhouse model of the gallery. And we do this for every fair and every exhibition. And this is what you're looking at. It's a scale model of the gallery built out of foam core by our very wonderful art handlers. And then we take the images, and in Ellen's case, we printed out probably about 1,000 images. I went through them, edited down to maybe 100, and then we start playing with scale. So as you can see here, that's what this is. Just kind of how we quite literally print out pictures and show how we want them to look on the wall.
And then do you decide what size they're going to be in terms of like
Yeah, every show is different. In Ellen's case, we have that option. Obviously, the whole process is a little easier if we don't have that option, because it's when things are just in one size, and it's a lot easier, because your choices are limited. So in this case, because almost everything is available in different sizes, the sky's the limit, but it makes the job a little harder and more complicated. So, as you can see with our exhibitions, we like to play a lot with scale. I like a mixture of very small and very big photographs, especially because Ellen's work is some of it's very intimate and voyeuristic.
Mhm.
And so, the ones that are like, sort of naughty, voyeuristic, almost burlesque like photographs look great as small, beautiful black and white silver prints. And then these kind of big epic pictures look better as larger pictures. So this is a picture just of our dollhouse model. I didn't take a picture of it, but even when we have a fair, we actually have scale table and chairs to
Oh,
really
wow.
show the scale and how it will look. But then after that, this is pictures that I actually took Natalie on Saturday while we're installing the actual show.
I'll just wait for it to
Can you
roll.
guys see
Yeah,
these?
we can see now.
Yeah.
So this is up now. This is
Yes, but I don't know if you can tell, but can you see my cursor?
yeah.
Okay, so these are two pictures that are framed and actually installed. These are the real photographs in the frame. These on the side
Mhm.
are actually printouts that we make on our printer, and then we make them to the scale of the picture and we tape them together. And the reason for this is because they're at the framer. We don't have them until Thursday, knock on wood, and our show opens the following week. So while we're trying to figure out where everything goes, I would say 95% of the time we don't have the actual work. So we make do with a combination of when we have it and then these scale models, which sort of show. And this is even more confusing because what I'm looking at here, you can see these are printed out scale
Yeah.
models. This is actually digital renderings that the team put over the picture to
Oh,
show
wow.
me how these will look, because we didn't have this. So, this is how we do it. It's a combination of very rudimentary and then pretty sophisticated. Thank God the team here knows a lot about Photoshop and all these programs. So
Yeah.
this is showing how the space will look at without any of the real pictures.
Wow.
Because that's what we have to do when we don't have them in time. Because once we have the pictures, it's a scramble to actually get them installed, So this is on Saturday. We taped these up and pasted them on the wall with blue painter's tape. And then, as you can see here on the floor, these are the real frame photographs.
Wow.
These will be installed on that black. I think we have a picture. Yeah, this is a few hours later, once they were actually installed by Itamar, our art handler. But you can see it's kind of a combination. It's rare that we have the pictures framed and ready to go, and we're walking them around and figuring out where they go. We're trying to do that. You're sort of like anticipating the next step before ahead of it, So it's a funny way to do it, but it's necessary given the timelines of everything. Look, Ellen is in Paris. She's a very busy artist, so she's not able to send everything 3 months before, it's just not the way it works. So it's a little bit of a scramble, as it always is. And we've figured out a system to do it in this way, where it's a combination of real life models, digital models, et cetera, et cetera. So
No, yeah, this is great. Like it's so nice to see the behind the scenes, because when you do walk into a show, you're like, oh wow, everything looks amazing. And you don't
I
really
know.
think about what happened maybe a few hours before the doors opened, you know?
I know, it's so funny, Natalie, you say that, because because of for whatever reason, our exhibition schedule this round, we've had a couple of weeks where we're between exhibitions. So in many ways, we've had the leisure of playing around with the gallery space like this. And, we're still open for business. And sometimes I get a little self-conscious and feel a little embarrassed that we kind of look like we're in shambles when people come in. But I actually think people kind of love it, as you said, to see the process and how the sausage is made. It's maybe not ideal, but I think it is interesting, right? And maybe other galleries close or are just more efficient with how they install shows, but we're kind of like open for business, receiving visitors as people, as we're, there's stuff all over the floor, we're banging nails in. But it's interesting. So you can see here the guys are putting two pictures that were formally up front, and we decided they'd be better back here. So things shift around when you're doing a show, despite, I showed you the dollhouse and then the digital rendering, you do all that and you sort of think you know where things are going to go. And then the truth is that once you're looking at something in front of you, you may get a very different impression, or just something about it creates maybe a direction you do or you don't like. And so you move things around, and that's just, you sort of tinker until it comes into place.
Oh, I know. I really love that you stay open whilst you're doing the installation process. I know for me personally, it makes the gallery very inviting. You're so transparent about how you work and how you operate and how you think about things, and like you're really thinking about the images and the order of them. And yeah, no, thank you so much. I'm fangirling right now, so thank you so much for
Good.
uh
I'm glad you like seeing it. Yeah. Yeah.
sharing.
And then if here is just a preview actually of the works. I hope you guys can see this, but this is a hidden page on our website that will update when the show becomes live. But
We're still seeing the
oh,
PDF.
oh, you're not seeing the.
No, Zoom is very funny. When you switch out of which screen you're sharing, it doesn't show us. I've
Oh,
had this problem before, so
okay. Well, then maybe I don't know how to do it, but it was really just our website showing the images. I'm not sure how to do it unless you could walk me through it quickly.
maybe if you close the PDF,
Okay.
and so quit this application, and then yeah, if you reshare screen and show your the is it a website you're showing us?
Yeah. Oh, maybe it'll work now. Do you see it
Yeah.
now?
Yeah, now we see it.
Yeah. So this is just our website, and these are some of the images. So in this exhibition, Ellen's, a very prolific and, has been working for quite a while, but whenever we do a show with a photographer of that kind of stature and longevity, we always try to find pictures that haven't been printed before. It's a big struggle because it takes a lot of time and effort for those, photographers to dig up the negatives, to get the images ready to print, et cetera, et cetera. But I think it's so important, because otherwise you're just showing pictures that, this is a very familiar picture in our world. A lot of collectors love it and have it, but we can't always rely on that.
Yeah.
And this, that's another example of a picture where it's sort of very big and epic and over the top, which is why, if you remember, we showed it very low. We're going to show it very large in the exhibition, whereas some of this is sort of the wall of black and whites that you saw. These are much more intimate, kind of, 1920s Berlin, sexy cabaret-ish pictures.
Yeah.
And these will be very small. So this is, that's how but it's these pictures are just as much an important part of Ellen's work as are these kind of very big, this will be very large, these sort of more epic, grand pictures. So,
Wow,
yeah.
I'm excited. I'm gonna have to fly over again. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time. We're just gonna answer a few questions that some of the participants have sent to us. And then behind the scenes, I think the code to receive a discount to enter this year's Off the Clock will be dropped into the chat. If it doesn't show up, please let me know or drop it in the Q&A. So our first question is, I think it's going back to meeting with artists. At what point when you've agreed to meet with an artist, is it okay for them to show you a curated PDF, or should it be print at like the first meeting?
Yeah. I'm glad you asked that. The truth is that we're a gallery and we do not exhibit or sell PDFs or JPEGs. So at the end of the day, I'm very interested in a physical piece. However, I'm very aware that printing, first of all, costs a fortune. It's annoying to lug around things. So, I usually, when we're meeting someone, I always stress, if possible, to bring as many photographs as you're able, photographic prints as you're able to. They certainly don't have to be framed. They can even be work prints, but at the end of the day, that's what we're dealing with, is a physical object, not a JPEG. I have had experiences where, frankly, pretty like, let me put it this way, artists that I know have the resources and means to bring prints just show up with a PDF that they want to airdrop to our iPad. And that can feel a little not enough. So that's the answer.
Okay, that's really good. This is all being recorded, so I'm gonna go back and rewatch this for all the tips and tricks. So yeah, no, thank you for sharing with us. Another question's come in saying gallery edition versus print. So besides being limited editions, what other factors differentiate a gallery edition from prints, and how can artists best handle these contracts?
I'm not sure I quite understand the question, but what a gallery editions are encouraged, of course. Limited editions are encouraged for an artist's work. They are a good business practice.
Yeah.
So in terms of the others, I mean, if a gallery was working with an artist, frankly, we wouldn't want there to be others out there, because part of what you're doing when you're offering edition work to a collector is you're saying, look, there is an agreement on the part of the artist that this image will only be released in this size, and in 4 of them, whatever. So there shouldn't really be there shouldn't be other prints out there.
And in terms of editions, say you have an edition of 10 at 11 by 14, can you have another edition of 5 at like 20 by 24 or something? That
Yes.
is okay.
Technically, yes, absolutely. It's legal, and it's not uncommon for artists to have different editions per size.
Okay.
Some artists now, and something that I kind of favor because I think it makes it a little easier, is they will say, I'm going to do one single edition of 10, 20 prints, right? And they can be whatever size is ordered. But at the end of the day, there's only going to be 10 examples. So if 10 people order this print in a 20 by 24, that means there will only be 2024s out there. If
Okay.
someone orders 2024, 30, 40, blah, 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 then there'll be multiple sizes, but there'll still only be 10 prints. So
Right. Okay. No, thank you so much for clarifying that. Another question, in terms of open calls such as Off the Clock, do you suggest that all images be from the same body of work?
to be honest, I'm not sure the criteria for submission. Are people allowed to submit more than one picture?
Yeah, I think I can't remember. It's a cost per entry of picture.
Well, even though this is sort of contradicts what I said about a portfolio review, yes, for this, I don't think they need to be the same body of work, and probably it would be more advantageous to the submitter to submit different ideas for sure.
Right. Yeah, okay, cool. We have another question. A photographer has asked that they're not sure if you'd be drawn to, say, a different like genre, like documentary or street photography. Do you have any thoughts on this, or are you open to see a wide range of styles? That's fine.
I'm definitely open to seeing a wide range of, as I said, I kind of, unless you're what you do is fashion and photography,
Mhm.
don't try to cater it to me. Try to cater it to what's the best of you, I think I have enough faith in my ability to kind of recognize whether it's good or not, or whether it's, the best for this contest, regardless of the genre, So if you work in documentary photography, absolutely, I want to see that. So
Amazing. All right. Well, I don't think any more questions have come in. So to everyone that's still with us, thank you for waiting patiently to the end. The discount code has been sent out. We do have a list of attendees as well. So everyone that's attended this webinar will if you don't receive the code, we will find a way to get it to you. I don't want to say what the code is because this is actually going to go onto YouTube. So kudos to everyone that attended. You will be rewarded with a discount code. And thank you so much, George. We can't wait to launch the competition, which is on the 1st of March. That's when everything kicks off. And I'm super excited to see how your curation process is going to happen with all the submissions. So
I'm really excited to see everyone's work. So
yeah, thank you again for your time. And thank you to everyone, all our sponsors, our attendees. And let me just check my notes to see if I've missed anything. I hope I haven't. And yeah, everyone have a great rest of your week and make sure you enter.
bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.